Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 22 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 22nd day on the third canto, and we are in chapter 8, which is titled Manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. In other words, Bhagavatam is examining the whole pastime of the appearance of Lord Brahma on the lotus flower and all the activities that happened which led up to the Supreme Personality of Godhead instructing him. The initial instructions, first 4 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. Right, so let us begin by chanting our prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachadeshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Right, yes, so day 22 on the third canto, 8th chapter, and we begin with verse 21. This is the beginning of the 4th and last section in the 8th chapter of the 3rd canto, and it's called Brahma Meditates and Realizes the Lord. So we've over the last couple of days or so, we have gone over the preliminary information, how Lord Brahma appeared and finds himself there on top of in the whirl of the lotus flower. So now he's actually going to really come to grips with the situation. So first of all, though, let us read through the verses themselves, from verse 21 to verse 33. It's the last section of this chapter. Okay, so verse 21. Thereafter, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back again to the top of the lotus. Thus, controlling all objectives, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord. Verse 22. At the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge, and as a result, he could see in his heart the Supreme within himself, whom he could not see before with the greatest endeavor. Verse 23. Brahma could see that on the water there was a gigantic lotus-like white bedstead, the body of Sheshanaga, on which the personality of Godhead was lying alone. The whole atmosphere was illuminated by the rays of the jewels bedecking the hood of Sheshanaga, and that illumination dissipated all the darkness of those regions. Verse 24. Just a sec. The luster of the transcendental body of the Lord mocked the beauty of the coral mountain. The coral mountain is very beautifully dressed by the evening sky, but the yellow dress of the Lord mocked its beauty. There is gold on the summit of the mountain, but the Lord's helmet, bedecked with jewels, mocked it. The mountain's waterfalls, herbs, etc., with a panorama of flowers, seem like garlands, but the Lord's gigantic body and his hands and legs, decorated with jewels, pearls, lotus leaves, and flower garlands, mocked the scene on the mountain. 25. His transcendental body, unlimited in length and breadth, occupied the three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. His body was self-illuminated by unparalleled dress and variegatedness, and was properly ornamented. 26. The Lord showed his lotus feet by raising them. His lotus feet are the source of all awards achieved by devotional service free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from his moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. 27. He also acknowledged the service of the devotees and vanquished their distress by his beautiful smile. The reflection of his face, decorated with earrings, was so pleasing because it dazzled with the rays from his lips and the beauty of his nose and eyebrows. 28. O my dear Vidura, the Lord's waist was covered with yellow cloth, resembling the saffron dust of the Kadamba flower, and it was encircled by a well-decorated belt. His chest was decorated with the Srivatsa marking and a necklace of unlimited value. 29. As a sandalwood tree is decorated with fragrant flowers and branches, the Lord's body was decorated with valuable jewels and pearls. He was the self-situated tree, the Lord of all others in the universe. And as a sandalwood tree is covered with many snakes, so the Lord's body was also covered by the hoods of Ananta. Verse 30. Like a great mountain, the Lord stands as the abode for all moving and non-moving living entities. He is the friend of the snakes, because Lord Ananta is his friend. As a mountain has thousands of golden peaks, so the Lord was seen with the thousands of golden helmeted hoods of Anantanaga. And as a mountain is sometimes filled with jewels, so also his transcendental body was fully decorated with valuable jewels. As a mountain is sometimes submerged in the ocean water, so the Lord is sometimes submerged in the water of devastation. 31. Lord Brahma, thus looking upon the Lord in the shape of a mountain, concluded that he was Hari, the personality of Godhead. He saw that the garland of flowers on his chest glorified him with Vedic wisdom in sweet songs and looked very beautiful. He was protected by the Sudarshan wheel for fighting, and even the sun, moon, air, fire, etc., could not have access to him. 32. When Lord Brahma, the maker of the universal destination, thus saw the Lord, he simultaneously glanced over creation. Lord Brahma saw the lake in Lord Vishnu's navel and the lotus flower, as well as the devastating water, the drying air, and the sky. All became visible to him. 33. Lord Brahma, thus being surcharged with the mode of passion, became inclined to create. And after seeing the 5 causes of creation indicated by the personality of Godhead, he began to offer his respectful prayers on the path of the creative mentality. So there you go, devotees. Those are the verses themselves from this last section of the 8th chapter of the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this last section, section number 4, verse 21 to verse 33, we've titled Brahma Meditates and Realizes the Lord. Right, so let's get into it. Verse 21. Thereafter, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back again to the top of the lotus. Thus, controlling all objectives, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord. There's a purport here. It's short purport, but anyway. Prabhupada makes the point, the first point. He discusses the term samadhi, which is used in the verse. If you've got a copy of the book there with the Sanskrit, you'll see samadhis. The word samadhis in the last line of the Sanskrit, the second to last word, samadhi yoga. Yeah. So Prabhupada gives a brief definition. What is samadhi? That it means concentrating the mind on the supreme cause of all. Yeah, the supreme cause of all causes, the ultimate. It's not really, it doesn't really refer to some other type of concentration or concentration on some other thing. Although Srila Prabhupada does elaborate and expand slightly that even if you don't know whether the supreme cause of all is personal, impersonal, or localized, But if you're trying your best to concentrate your mind on the supreme cause, then that's samadhi. Yes. And then Prabhupada goes on, concentrating the mind on the supreme is certainly a form of devotional service, and in reference to the first sentence here, just what we were saying a minute ago, Prabhupada made the point, as we read, that samadhi means concentrating the mind on the supreme cause, which could be, if you're not clear, but it could be personal, could be impersonal, or it could be localized. If you understand the supreme cause to be personal, which of course ultimately is the fact, then that means concentrating the mind on the form of the Lord, on Lord Krishna, or some other bona fide real form of the Lord, like Lord Ramachandra. Lord Ramachandra, yeah. But you may not know that, and you may think that samadhi means concentrating your mind on some impersonal thing, which is the supreme cause. You may think that means Brahman. Yes, focusing the mind, concentrating the mind on the impersonal Brahman. Or, if you know a little bit but not too much about these things, then you may have the idea that samadhi means concentrating the mind on the supersoul, or, as Prabhupada says here, the localized form of the Lord, which is a form but is different from the fully personal form like Lord Krishna or Lord Ramachandra or Lord Narayan. So, right, it could be, in a broad sense, it could be, samadhi could mean concentrating your mind on either of these three. Yes, so anyway, then Prabhupada goes on, that concentrating the mind on the Supreme is certainly a form of devotional service. Well, yeah, okay. And let us at least say that, it's certainly a form of devotional service, particularly if you're focusing your mind on the personal aspect of the absolute truth, means Supreme Personality of Godhead, ideally in his form as Krishna, but if not, at least some other bona fide form like Lord Ramachandra, Lord Narayan, Lord Vishnu, etc., and many etceteras, then it's absolutely a form of devotional service. If you concentrate your mind on the localized form, the supersoul, then it's related to devotional service. Generally speaking, you can't say that it's just got nothing to do with it at all. But of course you haven't really quite got it as well as you should get it. But if you follow some process, bona fide process from that point on, then sooner or later you will come to the point of accepting the Supreme Personality of Godhead and not just the Supersoul. Then similarly, if we're to take that concentration of the mind on the Supreme as certainly being a form of devotional service, it can even relate to the impersonal feature, the Brahmajyoti, in that Just as an example, it's a good example. In the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna talks about either realizing the Lord, to keep it simple, it's kind of at the beginning of the 5th chapter. Either you're realizing the Lord, or you're in a process which sort of more or less inevitably brings one to realizing the Lord personally, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there, Lord Krishna and Srila Prabhupada explains in these terms that in that sense, at least ultimately, you can say that the two processes are the same or equal, more or less. Either the process of actually being focused on the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, or a process which will lead you to that inevitably. If you get the idea, it can be taken like that. So certainly in that sense, concentrating the mind on the Supreme, even in these three somewhat different types of features, it can be taken to be certainly a form of devotional service. But obviously, if you focus your mind on the Brahma Jyoti, and that as an end in and of itself, in personal realization, then you can't really say that it's a form of devotional service. And similarly with focusing on the Supersoul. If you take the Supersoul to be the essence, the final thing, realization of the Supersoul to be the ultimate and everything, the whole process, the effort for realization ends there and just doesn't go beyond that, then it's not really a form of devotional service. It's probably more like Ashtanga Yoga, actually, but it's not really just like real, pure devotional service. So anyway, Srila Prabhupada continues that to cease from personal sense endeavors and then concentrate on the Supreme Cause is a sign of self-surrender. And that is a sure sign of devotional service. When self-surrender is there, that's a sure sign of devotional service. Yes, of course we know. At the end, almost just right by the end of the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that we should surrender to Him. Sarvadhamma pratyaja, mam ekam sharanam vraja. That type of surrender, Prabhupada says here, is a sure sign of devotional service. So then Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, each and every living entity needs to engage in devotional service to the Lord if he wishes to understand the ultimate cause of his existence. Right. Certainly, most certainly. And on to verse 22. At the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge, and as a result he could see in his heart the Supreme within himself, whom he could not see before with the greatest endeavor. So anyway, Prabhupada makes an interesting point at the beginning of the purport here. I mean, yeah, it is an interesting point in relation to what's being stated here, the realization of Lord Brahma, that the Supreme Lord can be experienced only through devotional service and not by some personal endeavor in the form of mental speculation. You know, of course, that's such a famous point. How many times has Prabhupada brought it up in these last chapters and verses of the Bhagavatam as far as we've got? Srila Prabhupada goes on to say that Lord Brahma's age is calculated in terms of divya years, which are quite distinct from the solar years of us, of the human beings. And Srila Prabhupada then goes on, referring to Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 verse 17, to give an explanation of what we're actually talking about here. So just a moment ago, we referred to the purport. Prabhupada said the age of Brahma is calculated in terms of divya years, which are distinct from the solar years of human beings. And then Srila Prabhupada gives a calculation. What is a divya year? How long is a divya year? What does it mean? So the divya years are calculated in terms of Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 verse 17. Sahasra Yuga Pariyantam Aharyad Brahmano Vidu. And Prabhupada explains that his Brahmas one day is equal to 1,000 times the aggregate of the 4 yugas, which Prabhupada... Okay, well, the aggregate, just the aggregate of the 4 yugas is 4,320,000 actually million years. Prabhupada's just sort of, what would you say? Just sort of bringing it to the nearest even number, something like that, you could say. 4,300,000 is really 4,320,000. Yeah. Which, anyway, that's 4,320,000 is 4 yugas put together. Kali Yuga is 432. Anyway, Kali Yuga is there, 432,000. And then Dwarapara is 864. And then Treta is, whatever. And then Satya Yuga is greater, and in fact, all of them together are 10 times Kali Yuga, 432,000, or in other words, 10 times 432,000 is 4,320,000. Yeah, because Dwapara Yuga is twice Kali Yuga. Treta Yuga's twice Dwapara, or in other words, 4 times Kali, and then Satyuga is double that. Right, so anyway, it works out to for the aggregate of the 4,320,000 years, solar years, hour years, and Lord Brahma's one day is equal to 1,000 times that, is 4,320,000,000. And that, of course, devotees, that is just his 12 daylight hours. That's not his 24 hours. No. His 24 hours is 8 billion. It's double. 8 billion and 640 million. Right, so like this, on that basis, Prabhupada says that Lord Brahma meditated for 100 of his years. That's an awfully long time. And then he wrote the Brahma Samhita, which is approved and recognized by Lord Chaitanya, and in which Lord Brahma sings, Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. And the thing is that, Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, one has to wait for the mercy of the Lord before one can either render service unto him or know him as he is. That's such a thing, isn't it? Look at our situation. Look at our situation. Despite everything, and that's a lot, despite all the nonsense and shortcomings and all the other things, whatever you can say, we have got devotional service, and we have got at least some understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, as he is. So what can one say? It's simply mercy. It's Prabhupada's mercy too, yeah. All right, anyway, let's carry on. Verse 23. Brahma could see that on the water there was a gigantic lotus-like white bedstead, the body of Sheshanaga, on which the personality of Godhead was lying alone. The whole atmosphere was illuminated by the rays of the jewels bedecking the hood of Sheshanaga, and that illumination dissipated all the darkness of those regions. So there's no purport here to verse 23. So we'll go on to verse 24. There's a very short purport, but at least there is a purport to 24. The luster of the transcendental body of the Lord mocked the beauty of the coral mountain. The coral mountain is very beautifully dressed by the evening sky, but the yellow dress of the Lord mocked its beauty. There is gold on the summit of the mountain, but the Lord's helmet, bedecked with jewels, mocked it. The mountain's waterfalls, herbs, etc., with a panorama of flowers seem like garlands. But the Lord's gigantic body and his hands and legs, decorated with jewels, pearls, tulsi leaves, and flower garlands, mocked the scene on the mountain. Well, that's quite a way to put everything, isn't it? How emphatic is that? How many times mocked? The luster of the Lord's body mocked the beauty of the coral mountain. And the evening, the yellow dress of the Lord mocked the beauty of the evening sky, which dresses the coral mountain. Then the gold on the top, on the summit of the mountain, which I'm sure is really nice, but the Lord's helmet bedecked with jewels mocked that gold. Then the scene on the mountain, its waterfalls, herbs, panorama of flowers which seem like garlands, all those things which decorate the mountain. The Lord's body, the Lord's gigantic body, with his hands and legs decorated with jewels, pearls, tulsi leaves, and flower garlands, mocked that overall scene of the mountain with all its different, you might say, component parts or something like that. So it looks like 4 mockings. The Lord's body mocked, the dress of the Lord mocked, the Lord's helmet with its jewels mocked, and then the Lord's gigantic body with his hands and legs decorated with different things mocked. So 4 mockings. And, to mock something, that's very strong. That's really very strong. It's one thing to say that the luster of the Lord's body, it looked nicer than the beauty of the coral mountain. But to say that the luster of the Lord's body mocked the beauty of the coral mountain means that basically it made the coral mountain look stupid and just, it's got no real beauty. Yeah, it's just not worth bothering with at all. Yes, so, we should note that. We should note that. And Prabhupada in the purport, just very short purport, he makes the point that the beauty of nature, because that's what the coral mountain is all about, with its different features and the way it looks at different times from sort of different perspectives or whatever like that. Prabhupada says that the panoramic beauty of nature is just a perverted reflection of the transcendental body of the Lord. Perverted. Even that word perverted is a very strong word. For something to be perverted, it really means that it's just, it's really not nice at all. In fact, it's kind of sick. Anything which is perverted is kind of sick. So the beauty of nature is just a perverted reflection of the transcendental body of the Lord. So therefore, one who's attracted actually by the body of the Lord, which has such incredible beauty, it just well, it mocks. It just mocks, like, what is this? It just mocks the beauty of material nature. So anyway, one Prabhupada says, one who's attracted by the body of the Lord is just naturally not attracted by the beauty of nature. Although he appreciates the beauty of nature. Prabhupada says he doesn't minimize the beauty of nature. So Srila Prabhupada then concludes the purport by saying, in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 59, it is described that one who is attracted by Param, the Supreme, is no longer attracted by anything inferior. Okay, let's go on to verse 25. His transcendental body, unlimited in length and breadth, occupied the three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. His body was self-illuminated by unparalleled dress and variegatedness, and was properly ornamented. Right. So the size of the Lord's body, transcendental body, how are we going to measure it? It can only be measured, Prabhupada says, by his own measurement, by his own standards, because he's all-pervading throughout the cosmic creation. And just referring back to what we read, Prabhupada said in the previous purport of verse 24, that the devotees, even though they know, they know vividly that the beauty of the body of the Lord is much, much greater than the beauty of nature, but still they don't minimize the beauty of nature, because they understand that it's Krishna's nature. But still, the body of the Lord is just in a different category of beauty altogether. And whatever, Prabhupada makes the point that the beauty of material nature is due to his personal beauty. If it wasn't for the beauty of the Lord, the material nature, even the material nature depends what aspect of it you see, like Arjuna in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, seeing the universal form. And some of it was beautiful, and he appreciated it, but some of it was shocking. So the point here is that wherever you see beauty in the material nature, you should understand it's due to his beauty. And there's famous English saying, which Prabhupada quoted on a number of occasions, the borrowed plumes. Borrowed plumes. Someone may have some plumes, some feathers, which make them look nice, but they're borrowed from, maybe a peacock. And they're naturally part of the attractiveness of a peacock, but when you borrow those or take those from the peacock to enhance your attractiveness, then we say that beauty is there just on the basis of borrowed plumes. It's not really your beauty. Right, and Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, He, the Lord, He is always magnificently dressed and ornamented to prove His transcendental variegatedness, which is so important in the advancement of spiritual knowledge. He's always dressed so nicely and ornamented in all different types of ways on different occasions. And it's all just to prove, to establish, look, see His transcendental variegatedness in all these different ways of manifesting Himself, variegated ways of His appearance and how He is. It's always magnificent. Wonderful dressing, ornamentation. And it's just showing, just see, proving His transcendental variegatedness. Just see, when He's appearing like this, how wonderful He is. When He's appearing in some completely different way, how wonderful He is. And Prabhupada says this is so important in the advancement of spiritual knowledge. And that's a very, very important point. Because when we say spiritual knowledge, what do we mean? Ultimately, we mean knowledge about the Lord. And the Lord is so multifaceted. And to be able to appreciate His multifacetedness, you need to see Him, appreciate Him in His different appearances, different forms, different ways of dressing, different ways of being ornamented. And then you understand, look at how amazing He is. And that's advanced spiritual knowledge. Right, so verse 26. The Lord showed His lotus feet by raising them. Wow. His lotus feet are the source of all awards achieved by devotional service free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship Him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from His moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. Okay, there's a purport here. It's a little more substantial, sort of half a page or so. And Prabhupada begins by making the point, the Lord fulfills everyone's desires, as one desires. Yeah, right. And of course, the pure devotees, what do they want? They're only interested in service to Him, which is non-different from Him. So therefore, Prabhupada says, the Lord is the only desire of the pure devotees, and devotional service is the only process for achieving His favor. So therefore, one has to engage in pure devotional service. So Prabhupada makes the point that Srila Rupa Goswami, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11, very, very famous verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, arguably the best known verse from the introduction, Jnana karma adhyanavritam. Pure devotional service is without any tinge of speculative knowledge and fruitive activities. And because it's so pure like that, completely devoid of even a hint of speculative knowledge and fruitive activities. So therefore, such devotional service, Prabhupada says, is able to award the pure devotee the highest result, namely direct association with the Lord Krishna. So, Gopal Tapani Upanishad makes some comments on these points, the situation. So there, Prabhupada refers to Gopal Tapani Upanishad. He quotes, doesn't actually say the verse number, but he quotes the Sanskrit Brahmano Sav Anavaratam Medhyatastuta Paradante Sobhujita Gopavesho Me Purastad Avir Babuva, which means that after penetrating or meditating for millions of years, of our years, Lord Brahma could understand the transcendental form of the Lord to be Sri Krishna in the dress of a cowherd boy. And so therefore he recorded his experience in Brahma Samhita. Yes. So, but anyway, Gopal Tapani Upanishad is saying that, Prabhupada says, that the Lord showed Lord Brahma one of the many thousands of petals of his lotus feet. Yeah. All right, so let's go on to verse 27. He also acknowledged the service of the devotees and vanquished their distress by his beautiful smile. The reflection of his face, decorated with earrings, was so pleasing because it dazzled with the rays from his lips and the beauty of his nose and eyebrows. Wow, that's very wonderful, isn't it? The Lord was there, and Lord Brahma saw the Lord. And what was the Lord doing? He was acknowledging the service of the devotees and smiling at them in this way, vanquishing any distress they might have. So Prabhupada makes the point, he makes it so often, that there are at least many types of transcendentalists and transcendental processes. Of course, there are mainly three: devotional service, and then like Ashtanga Yoga for super soul realization, and then the impersonal speculative process for Brahman realization. So they're the main types of transcendentalists and processes. But there are others, but devotional service is unique. And devotional service is so wonderful, so ecstatic. The devotees don't ask for anything from the Lord in return for their service. They even refuse liberation if the Lord offers it. Yeah. And in this way, the Lord becomes a kind of debtor to his devotees, Prabhupada says. And he can only try to repay them by his ever-enchanting smile. And the devotees are satisfied with that smile. And then they become enlivened further, which satisfies him further, the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, so there is continuous, transcendental competition between the Lord and his devotees by such reciprocation of service and acknowledgement. Service and then acknowledgement of the service. 28. O my dear Vidura, the Lord's waist was covered with yellow cloth, resembling the saffron dust of the kadamba flower, and it was encircled by a well-decorated belt. His chest was decorated with the Srivatsa marking and a necklace of unlimited value. So there's no purport. Verse 29, as a sandalwood tree is decorated with fragrant flowers and branches, the Lord's body was decorated with valuable jewels and pearls. He was the self-situated tree, the Lord of all others in the universe. And as a sandalwood tree is covered with many snakes, so the Lord's body was also covered by the hoods of Ananta. So in the purport, Prabhupada refers to the word from the verse of Yakta Moolam, which means self-situated. Yeah. So self-situated, Prabhupada explains, as far as the Lord's concerned, he's the root of himself. Therefore, he's self-situated. There's no other separate cause of him and his position and what he is other than him. So therefore, it's the Vedas say, and this is an interesting point, that he is swa ashraya ashraya. He is swa ashraya. He's his own shelter. Well, there are some things which are the shelter, like the super soul is the shelter of the living entities. But the super soul, the shelter of the super soul is Krishna. That means the super soul, the super soul is Ashraya, because he's the shelter of the living entities. Then the Lord is the shelter of the super soul, means he's Ashraya, Ashraya, shelter of the shelter. But the Lord is his own shelter. The Lord is the shelter of the super soul, who's the shelter of the living beings. The Lord is the shelter of himself also. So he is Swa Ashraya, Ashraya. He's his own support. There's no other support for him. So therefore, avyakta, this term referred to at the beginning of the purport, self-situated, means the Supreme Lord himself. So therefore, avyakta means the Supreme Lord himself and no one else. Right, so verse 30 verse 30. Like a great mountain, the Lord stands as the abode for all moving and non-moving living entities. He's the friend of the snakes because Lord Ananta is his friend. As a mountain has thousands of golden peaks, so the Lord was seen with the thousands of golden helmeted hoods of Ananta Naga. And as a mountain is sometimes filled with jewels, so also his transcendental body was fully decorated with valuable jewels. As a mountain is sometimes submerged in the ocean water, so the Lord is sometimes submerged in the water of devastation. There's no purport here. 31. Lord Brahma, thus looking upon the Lord in the shape of a mountain, concluded that he was Hari, the personality of Godhead. He saw that the garland of flowers on his chest glorified him with Vedic wisdom in sweet songs and looked very beautiful. He was protected by the Sudarshan wheel for fighting, and even the sun, moon, air, fire, etc. could not have access to him. When Lord Brahma, the maker of the universal destination, thus saw the Lord, he simultaneously glanced over creation. Lord Brahma did. Lord Brahma saw the lake and Lord Vishnu's navel and the lotus flower, as well as the devastating water, the drying air and the sky. All became visible to him. 33. Lord Brahma, thus being surcharged with the mode of passion, became inclined to create. And after seeing the 5 causes of creation indicated by the personality of Godhead, he began to offer his respectful prayers on the path of the creative mentality. So there is a very short purport here to this verse, which is the last verse in the chapter. I'll just read it. Even if one is in the material mode of passion, to create something in the world, he has to take shelter of the Supreme for the necessary energy. That is the path of the successful termination of any attempt. Hare Krishna. So we'll carry on tomorrow with chapter 9. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.